Hello friends, this is Grief speaking. Today we're going to finish up the Very Disturbing Game Iceberg. So after researching and reviewing the last few tiers of the iceberg, I realized that the majority of the remaining entries on this particular iceberg were visual novels. And I'm not saying those aren't games or that they can't be spooky. I mean, God knows they can be disturbing, but they tend to get repetitive really fast in a video like this. So essentially what I've done is remove the visual novels for the most part and combine the last three tiers into one video. With that aside, there are some really cool entries here that I think are worth checking out, so without any further ado, let's get into part 3 of the Very Disturbing Game Iceberg. Death Forest. Death Forest is a Slender type game where you're trapped in a forest at night and must collect several items in order to get your motorbike working and escape. The main antagonist of the game is a giant floating head called Yoshi. She's constantly stalking you throughout the game along with a few other creatures. It's an interesting game because Yoshi is just a flat image chasing you, which manages to look both goofy and horrifying at the same time. Mr. Hop's Playhouse. In this side-scroller, you play as Ruby, a little girl who's alone at night in her house while her stuffed rabbit comes to life as a monster and is hunting her down. Your task is to track down 6 cassette tapes that each hold more information as to what's going on while actively avoiding Mr. Hops. As you progress, Mr. Hops gets more and more agitated, and this all culminates into an epic chase scene. Twilight Syndrome. Twilight Syndrome is a game where you play as high school girls who investigate paranormal urban legends. The game utilizes heavy visual novel qualities in which you make choices that affect the investigations, and also side-scrolling exploration gameplay. The game features a heartbeat monitor at the top of the screen, which was a fairly new gimmick at the time and was praised for its 3D sound. I like the Scooby-Doo quality to the setting here, and it seems like it could be a fun playthrough. Itan, Stench of Death. Itan is a really obscure first-person point-and-click game where you play as a man who finds a woman's dead body and then is chased through an alley. It's very simple and has a kind of interesting art style. Garage, Bad Dream Adventure. I'm really glad this one made the list because it's one of those games that just instantly stood out to me when I first heard about it. Garage is not an easy game to explain, but I'll give you a brief overview. The game's set within the mind of a man who's attached to a therapy machine that creates a dystopian world in the user's mind. In this game, you play as a strange creature that is a mix of machine and biology whose lower body is essentially a train cart, which is how you navigate the world. This world looks like a strange Japanese fishing village set on top of a sea of dirty water. Its inhabitants are biomechanical entities trapped on these tracks and repeating the same day over and over. The loose plot is that the character is searching for their shadow, presumably to integrate it because the game is highly influenced by the philosophy of Carl Jung. The main draw of this game, or at least why it stands out so much, isn't just the bizarre setting but the art style. The game was created by surrealist artist Tomomi Sakuba and is a perfect showcase of his unsettling art. There's so much weird stuff in this game, like the fact that instead of a health bar you have ego and fuel bars, which if depleted cause a game over. I think this is one that probably deserves its own video to really break it down, but you get the idea. Galerians. Galerians has a wild storyline. Basically, an AI called Dorothy begins to create a new race of psychic humans that she can reign over as God. You play as a psychic with amnesia that wakes up in a hospital where experiments are being done in preparation for this new race, and this whole process is being dubbed the G Project. The game came out in 1999 in Japan and plays similarly to the tank control games of the time like Resident Evil. Although instead of using guns or melee weapons, you use your psychokinetic abilities such as setting people on fire, which is just awesome. The Dark Side of Little Red Riding Hood. This is exactly what the title suggests. You play as Little Red Riding Hood heading to her grandmother's house, except in this version of the story, every outcome holds a tragic and horrific fate for Little Red Riding Hood. These include an ending where Riding Hood kills her grandmother with an axe, another where she's kept as a slave by the hunter, and one where the grandmother's actually a cannibal that eats her. Interestingly enough, in the cannibal ending, the grandmother comments that this Red Riding Hood is better than the last one. This implies that this has happened before, and some people theorize that the ending where Riding Hood kills the grandma takes place after the cannibal ending, causing a new Riding Hood to seek revenge. Bad Mojo. Bad Mojo is just as strange as its name. You play as a man whose soul is transferred into a cockroach and must navigate the various rooms of a bar solving puzzles and being guided by the spirit of your dead mother. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's strange all around from the story to the gameplay, but I like games like that. Plus, it came out in '95, so it's just got that classic 90s PC game look. Sleepless. Sleepless might as well be called Sleep Paralysis Simulator since that's what it aims to do. You wake up at midnight only able to look around your room and blink as strange noises come from outside. Eventually this ends with a creepy figure directly on top of you staring down at you. And that's the game. It's very simple, but it does make you realize how terrifying sleep paralysis must be for the people who suffer from it. No Uta. This is a weird one. It's a visual novel about a guy who gets into a car crash that leaves him mentally impaired. The way this manifests is the fact that he sees environments and people as disgusting lumps of flesh. Right before committing suicide, he meets a girl who looks beautiful and they start a relationship, although this girl is actually a hideous monster. Pretty interesting premise, I gotta say. Party 2. Party 2 is not a sequel as far as I can tell, but the game begins with a message telling us that we're going to be playing as Ellie and that it's her birthday. This message is by Ellie's sister. From there you explore Ellie's house as more and more strange things begin happening. It's one of those games that really messes with you. The game intentionally crashes and causes you to load save files in which things have now changed in the game world. The game is quite vague as to the actual story, but we can assume that the phantom that haunts Ellie is her sister, and some people have theorized that Ellie killed her and her ghost is now out seeking revenge. Roly Poly's No Uta. Yeah, there's an 84% chance I just botched that name, but Roly Poly's is an edutainment game designed to teach Japanese children English. The thing is, it was created by the same people who made LSD Dream Emulator, and it shows because this game has crazy visuals. It just blows my mind that the LSD developers are responsible for this. I think this game was actually lost media for a while, and I'm not sure if it's playable at this point, but there are some gameplay videos floating around. Lostboy.exe. This is definitely disturbing, but not for the reasons you expect. The game was posted on 4chan in 2012 with the original post simply saying, "I found it, Lostboy.exe." So many 4chan users proceeded to download the game and play it. The game is a really simple first-person maze exploration game, although there's some very strange imagery in the game of Jesus and Satan. No one really found anything more to it, and while the satanic imagery is eerie, it's nothing to shake a stick at. But that's not why the game's scary. The person who posted the game originally later posted again, but this time it was a list of the private information of the people who played the game, including addresses, bank info, and private documents. Apparently the game had a Trojan virus that took all the information from your hard drive while you explored the maze. So if anything, this serves as a cautionary tale not to download any game you stumble across online. 99 Rooms. 99 Rooms is a visual puzzle solving game using pictures of the abandoned East Berlin industrial sector overlaid with moving art. Each room has a task that you must complete to progress, similar to point and click style escape games. It's a cool concept and the art style is really cool and really creepy at times. Inmouse No Yukata. Well, you know we're getting obscure when we're talking about the Virtual Boy. Inmouse No Yukata, sometimes translated as Insane Mouse Mansion, though it really means House of Innsmouth, is a survival horror game inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, released exclusively for Virtual Boy in 1995. Quick refresher on the Virtual Boy, it was basically Nintendo's first ever attempt at VR back in the 90s, although it wasn't received very well and all the games were in red for some reason. Anyway, back to this game. It plays like a dungeon crawler with first-person shooting elements and a time limit on every level. You take control of a private detective in 1922 who was hired to travel to an allegedly haunted forest in order to retrieve the Necronomicon within a mansion. After retrieving the book, you find yourself trapped as the inside of the mansion changes and monsters begin to appear. It's one of the only horror games I know of on the Virtual Boy and was exclusively released in Japan. Demonophobia. In Demonophobia, you play as a girl who attempts to summon a demon as a joke and ends up in hell. Hell is obviously full of traps and enemies who will kill you in brutal ways, which is where this game seems to be heavily inspired by Kiyo's Adventure, at least as far as the deaths go, because there are just seemingly endless ways to die, and these are accompanied by detailed death scenes. The game is notorious for being frustratingly difficult and just doesn't seem to hold up as well as Kiyo in my opinion. Chillas Art Games. Chillas Art is an indie game developer that's cropped up a lot in the last few years. They develop first-person PS1 style games that all have a similar style and setting, almost always taking place at night. They actually have a lot of games under their belt, most of which dive into Japanese folklore, but two that got a lot of attention are The Closing Shift and The Convenience Store. In The Closing Shift, you play as a barista working the late shift at a coffee shop when a strange man begins to stalk you. It's very simple, but hones in on a very specific type of fear, which it does effectively. In The Convenience Store, you work at a convenience store serving customers, which look creepy as hell by the way, due to the fact that they just plaster real-life images onto the character models. Anyway, as you complete the menial tasks, you can check the security cameras to monitor the store, and some spooky ghost stuff starts happening. I'm really glad indie horror developers like this can get their stuff out there. It reminds me a lot of the Puppet Combo games, both with the graphics and the VHS style overlay. I think these games really know how to do the atmosphere well, and they just give you an eerie feeling. Okay folks, that's it for today. I know this video was a lot shorter than the last two, but I have some really cool stuff coming out in the next few weeks that I've been working really hard on, and I hope you guys enjoy. Also, I plan on doing a much larger horror iceberg in the future, where I'll cover a lot more games that didn't make it into this one. Shout out to Naomi Romero for becoming a patron, and Kill Me Katie for the music. If you want to get a shout out like that at the end of every video, along with a bunch of other behind the scenes content, consider becoming a patron, the link is below. But I appreciate you guys watching at all, so thanks for the support. This is Grease speaking. Goodbye, friends.